Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of stories affecting the Sikh community around the world. And in Geneva, the United Nations once again hears a litany of India's crimes against Sikhs around the world, cementing once again the legal foundations for the establishment of Khalistan. And talking of India's crimes, we look at the case of a Canadian Sikh living in fear of his life from the Indian government hit squads after being falsely accused of throwing a grenade at the Indian High Commission. Well, echoes of Avtar Singh Kandar there. He was similarly falsely accused by India, followed by his assassination. Well, all that and more on today's show, but joining me, as always, is our roving correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Now, tonight we were going to have a bit of a story about Lieutenant Colonel Pritam Singh, and I always forget his first name, my apologies, but we're going to save that story for tomorrow night because I wanted to make sure I could pay him as much time as I could to make sure it honored him and respected his commitment to the Canadian military, and of course for Sikhs to wear their turbans in the Canadian Royal Legions. So again, we'll push that off to tomorrow night because we've got some other pressing stories tonight we wanted to make sure that we were able to report on. Other than that, folks, stick around to the end of the show as usual for all of your comments to see what made the grade. And again, don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe. Send the invitation to your friends and your family. Let's see if we can do a mass push on getting our subscriber base up even higher before the end of the year. Yes, we are entering into December already. I don't know where the year went, Angus. I don't know where it is.
Friday, I know blink and another year's gone. But anyway, in the meantime, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community, and we will indeed at the end of the show take a look at loads of great comments which still keep pouring in after our videos, so thank you very much for those. Right, James, loads to get through as always. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We're going to start in my backyard, Angus. And again, actually, in relation to this story, just coincidentally enough, I had to do a run down to a grocery store this evening. And as I was driving, one of the bus stops was all lit up with a new advertisement promoting people to contact the Surrey Police Service hotline for the extortion and violence that's going on. So they are taking out big advertisements around the city to educate people on the extortion rings and to reach out to the crisis team. So again, just a positive note that I noticed this evening in the community. They are trying to raise awareness in all different aspects that they can. Now, as I said, there was a trilateral meeting just the end of last week, and that included the City of Surrey's mayor, that is Brenda Locke, Premier David Eby, as well as several representatives from the federal government. And they were standing united in their commitment to deal with the extortion and violence epidemic that is sweeping and across Canada, especially in the Lower Mainland here, that is focusing the South Asian community, especially the Sikh community. So again, we are looking at just a couple of the quick points that they had brought up within their meeting. Now, big things, of course, financially, they have committed over $1 million more to the task force and to the victim services to assist those who have been targeted by this financial crime and the violence that has broken out. Now, that is a big commitment, and it follows another commitment by the federal government that has already issued Surrey just over $3.8 million annually, and that comes from one of the other law enforcement funds that is being dispensed throughout the country. Again, $3.8 million for the city of Surrey to help combat the crime wave, both in terms of extortion and the gang violence that has plagued the city and has been growing. Now, as I said, last night, they have definitely been utilizing every resource at their disposal. Now that the Cousineau gang has been elevated to terrorist status, again, they are using the Canadian Border Services Agency. They are using the provincial task force, the regional task force, as well as CSIS and other federal resources to target those who are trying to enter the country or to try and target or gain further intelligence on those that are involved in this activity from overseas and also throughout the U.S., as there does seem to be some link between the Cousineau gang, other people involved in the extortion rings, and those who are perpetrating the same type of crimes in the United States. Now, with this said, we can take a look at the Trilateral Summit and some of the quick summaries here and quotes that were brought up. Now, the Minister of Public Safety went on to say that extortion is a serious crime that threatens the safety of our communities and the well-being of families, as well as businesses. Today's summit was about bringing all orders of government along with law enforcement and taking the time to listen to those impacted. So again, they are opening up the floor to the victims of this crime and the community so that they can get a real grasp in the totality of the impact of the crimes on the community, on individuals, and of course on public safety as a whole. Now, of course, they are focused on disrupting the organized crime networks, expanding resources for victims, and ensuring that help is accessible to everyone. A part of that said, of course, they are also putting this release and other information out in Punjabi as well as other languages so that they can make sure that even if people have limited ability to speak the language, then at least they are able to get the resources in their own language. And I'm just going to pull that up quickly on the screen here so that you can see the Punjabi version if you want to pause on your screen at any point and read that, or to also we'll have it posted with a link on our Substack as well so that you can print that off and share it with others if you wish to do so. Again, there is a large pool of reward money up to bring any information that leads to arrests and convictions of those that are perpetrating these crimes in Surrey as well as the rest of the country. So again, if you have any information that could help lead to arrests, then by all means, you can reach out to the police in your jurisdiction, or you can contact Surrey Crime Stoppers, and you can do that just by a quick Google search. Now, in terms of the quick facts that they just wanted reiterated from this to the public, of course, we already know about the Extortion Task Force and the joint cooperation that's being launched with this. Again, it's the Combined Special Forces, Special Enforcement Unit, as well as the RCMP, the CBSA, Delta Police, Metro Vancouver Police, the Transit Police, Abbotsford Police, Surrey Police, and other counterparts from different divisions of the RCMP as well. $2,000 has been provided through the Government of Canada's Gun and Gang Violence Action Fund. And again, that is in addition to the other funding that was announced. And the city of Surrey has also put up reward money, as well as the federal and provincial governments. They are looking to try and crack down to make bail harder, to get toughened sentences for those crimes involving extortion. Once again, that is important because we've seen where some of these individuals who have been charged with not only the extortion ring, but other acts of violence in the community have been out on bail waiting for trial on other charges. So again, if they can try to focus in on that, that'll take some people off the street. The $1.3 billion border plan, once again, that is a mass project, but a part of that is targeting people who should not be admissible to Canada, and anyone who triggers warning in the Border Patrol system or the RCMP system that may be involved in criminality, but no Canadian conviction. So again, it is a big step as well. The Financial Crimes Agency and Canada's first national anti-fraud strategy. Again, they are going after those who are targeting financial fraud, and that is part and parcel of this in some of the developing stories. The Bishnoi Gang, of course, we covered that already. And then, as I said, and I said 3.8, but it was actually 3.96 million that BC or Surrey directly has received from the Building Safer Community Funds. So again, they've also incorporated a brand new Report Cybercrime and Fraud website, and that would include anybody being targeted by online extortion, that you can reach out through that website as well to get further assistance and to file reports. As we turn the tide, we are going to go south of the border, and information coming out on the report of a 31-year-old missing person in Stockton, California. This woman, Amandeep Kaur, has been located, but sadly she was located in her vehicle and had been stabbed multiple times. She was found deceased. The car had a broken out window, which really we need to look at all of the different parts of this. The police in Stockton stated clearly that they do not feel that the rest of the community is at risk. They don't feel that there is a risk to anybody else in the community as a result of this crime or this action, which leads me to believe that they may have someone that they have in mind, a suspect or a motive in this case. Keeping in mind that a stabbing is a personal crime, it is one that is unlike standing 100 feet away and shooting at someone. This takes you up close and personal. You're seeing the person as you're taking the life from them. And to smash the window of the vehicle means that there was, a lot of times if it's a random act, they would not be able to get into the car. They would flee and look for an easier victim, but instead they actually smashed the window out of this vehicle, stabbed the victim multiple times, causing her death. Now, the other concern, of course, is that this is a big issue, that this is a 31-year-old female in a regularly very quiet community, a safe community. And when I say that, I don't refer to Stockton as a totality. I'm talking about just this particular neighborhood. It's in between a university and a college. It is a residential area. It is not one that sees a lot of violence, and it's left the community quite shaken. There is a pastor by the name of Kevin White who is a pastor in Stockton, and he regularly, at least once a week, unfortunately, goes out to different sites where there have been victims of homicide and says prayers to honor the victims and to help the community to grieve. And that, I feel, is very important. He did attend and do a prayer session and a vigil there for Mrs. Kaur, and he also, with the group, hung a cross from the tree. And again, it shows that it's unifying all different parts of the community, no matter what the religious background, that there is support. Now, when it comes to Amandeep's family, of course, one of the community members was at the vigil, and she said that this kind of violence is unacceptable anywhere, especially in a community that values its peace. She was quite tearful as she went on to say that their hearts go out, and that is speaking on behalf of the community, that their hearts go out to Amandeep's family, and that they cannot allow this fear to paralyze them. Just the other day, again, just shortly after this event, there was a mass killing at a 2-year-old child's birthday party where 3 kids and 1 adult were deceased and 11 others injured, again in Stockton. So it shows that there is concern about violence within the community. However, where this differs from that is that there is potential gang involvement on the individuals who were attending that child's birthday party, and obviously not the children, but the adults that were there may have been the targets of that shooting. So again, they are looking at these as different cases, but it just goes to show that there is a very big problem with violence within the Stockton community, that the police chief, just as late as June this past summer, was saying that he wants to bring in a lot of cultural change to the police department, as well as get a lot more aggressive when it comes to going after this violent crime that's plaguing his city. So hopefully they can move forward, but in the meantime, unfortunately, this has been the result. Now, Amandeep's family had reached out when she was reported missing to the United Sikhs in California and asked them for assistance in trying to locate her, get the word out, spread her photo, and so forth. And they were very involved in doing that, but unfortunately, all of the efforts to locate Amandeep before she became victimized by this act of violence was not enough. And unfortunately, they are mourning along with the family. They are also making preparations to facilitate the transfer of Amandeep Kaur's body back to India so that her family can deal with it appropriately and that they can repatriate her to India. But again, just a horrible, horrible event that has happened. Police are asking anybody in the area that might have information, or anybody anywhere that might have information about the death of Amandeep Kaur, to please reach out to them. You can contact the Stockton Police Department directly at area code 209-937-8377. You can also contact through Crime Stoppers. The numbers are here on the screen, both for Crime Stoppers as well as the website. website. And you can also download the P3 Tips mobile app, and you can submit an anonymous tip there as well. You don't have to give your information in terms of your personal name and so forth. But again, if you have any information, and I might even add to that, or I will add to that, folks, that if you happen to be driving in these areas, even if it was an hour or so before the time of the crime, by all means, take a look at your video cameras in your cars, on your dash cams, because you may have picked something up on the camera that you didn't even notice when you were driving. So again, if you have any dash cam footage, that would be grateful, or that would be very helpful, and I know the police would be grateful to view that as well. So again, you can contact the Stockton Police Department through the information on the screen. Now, as we move on, ladies and gentlemen, we are, of course, quite often looking at the news that brings sadness to the community, to our viewers, because of incidents such as this, where a needless death has happened in a otherwise peaceful part of Stockton. And again, just if you have information, please reach out. But on that, we are going to turn our view to the other side of the law and an inspiring story about New Zealand's first Kiwi Punjabi woman police officer, now a senior sergeant. A huge deal for female Punjabis and other minorities who enter into not even just New Zealand, but any nation, to be able to grow into that role. Now, as we see this, Mandeep Kaur, she has risen to be the first India-born female senior sergeant. She has worked very hard for 17 years within the police department, helping to develop many different programs, from community policing right through to various outreach programs for different minority groups, and to bring the community together. So again, congratulations to her. And if you're interested, on the New Zealand Police website, they actually featured her a few years ago and brought a lot of information about her life and her history. Now, when she was younger and in Punjab, she had, unfortunately, her first marriage ended. She had 2 young children, and she was looking to further her education. And she had a dream of getting her master's and advanced degrees. So what happened is that with her divorce, she wasn't able to leave the country with her children. That was not an option for her, so her children stayed with her parents while she went to further her education in New Zealand. And she has definitely achieved greatness in her education, but also when the opportunity came that she was able to join the police force, she knew that it would not be an easy road. But it was something that when she was a child, her mother told her that if she would have been a boy, she could have been a police officer. And that's coming from the India mindset. And when the opportunity came for her to apply and to join the New Zealand Police Service, she really took advantage of that. That got her excited. She felt, oh my goodness, this is something that she wanted to do as a child. That dream was pushed away because it wasn't a realistic one in India. But now she had that opportunity, and she went on to finish her education. She went on to continue with to apply with the police department. Now she enjoys her time not only protecting the community as a senior sergeant, but also with her children and her grandchildren now. So also a grandmother. So a lot of development. She's faced a lot of challenges, but she's overcome them. She didn't shy away. She faced them head on and was ready to fight for what she wanted, and she definitely did it. Now, a police commissioner, Andrew Coster, said about Mandeep, Mandeep's promotion is well-deserved and deeply significant. She has faced every challenge head-on, delivering excellence while advocating for a more inclusive force. Her story will inspire countless individuals who may have previously felt that a career in policing was out of reach. And that is just so much about her story personally as it is for other people who are interested in policing, especially young girls. Now, there was a recent police college graduate that said, when I see her uniform, I see my possibilities. And that was Priya Sharma. And she went on to say that she didn't shy away from being different. She embraced it and used it as her strength. the lesson we are all learning from her. So you can see right there that she's already had this profound impact on inspiring other young ladies to join the New Zealand Police Force, to work hard, to have courage, and not to be fearful of the unknown, instead to embrace it. So again, congratulations to Mandeep Kaur, and I should say Senior Sergeant Mandeep Kaur. Congratulations, and may that be a powerful lesson and inspiration to the next generation as well, Angus.
Yeah, fantastic. Well done to her. And it actually brings to mind, I've seen over the recent year, there's been loads of firsts. I think I saw the first Sikh female fighter pilot somewhere, and loads of these firsts are occurring at an increasing rate. So it's just proving, firstly, these glass ceilings that we talk about. It's not just glass ceilings for the Sikh community, but particularly for Sikh women. And of course, it's always much harder in society for women to break through these ceilings for whatever endemic issues, social issues we have that seems to hold women back in society. But we are seeing these increasing shatterings of these ceilings. So it's fantastic to see stories like that. I want to jump back to the crime gang story, actually, because we often say one of India's most successful, and I say that slightly tongue-in-cheek, most successful exports, of course, is the issue of organised crime. And it has really hit, particularly North America, but particularly we see it in California and we see it in Canada. I don't think it's a coincidence that these are particularly the areas that have the largest Sikh diasporas. Now, the link there is obviously it's not the Sikh community behind it. I think it's just a lot of this organised crime are deliberately targeting the Sikh community. We do know that, for example, that the Bishnoi gang specifically, and it's not just exclusively the Bishnoi gang, there are other gangs as well coming out of India, but they do have a particular interest, let's say, in attacking the Sikh community. And as we say, we do know that they are likely proxy criminals acting on behalf of Indian intelligence and, by extension, the Indian government. So again, it's not surprising. But I think what is quite shocking, but it's also quite comforting in the same breath, is how many resources are now having to be expended by Canada, particularly. But it's not just Canada; the US is the same. But certainly Canada, as you said in your report, James, this is a multi-billion-dollar investment required by the Canadian government to tackle this endemic exploitative crime wave. And this is a crime wave driven primarily from India. And again, this is money. These are multi-billion-dollar investments that otherwise, these are schools and hospitals that are now not being paid for, or more nurses and doctors, or whatever it is. In other words, this is money having to be diverted to deal with an issue that's coming in from overseas. Again, it's transnational oppression in just a different form. And that in itself, I think, speaks volumes. And of course, it does have a huge impact, a huge indirect impact, because again, it's not just the direct impact on those who are suffering directly from this crime wave, from these extortion rackets. It's the indirect impact. Firstly, there's the opportunity cost of that money. That money, as I said, is diverted away from more positive aspects of building hospitals, building schools, etc. But also, it has an impact on society as a whole. Firstly, of course, there's just the general living in fear aspect. There's the whole communities, and it's not just the Sikh community, it's just the community as a whole in Canada now start to live in fear. Now, what does that fear breed? It breeds hatred, fear, division, etc. And again, this is another great export from the BJP government. For some reason, it's deeply successful in exporting fear and division. And of course, what that fear and division also then promotes the far right extremists. And we've seen this right across Europe now, is that unfortunately this crime wave coming in from overseas, particularly India, certainly in this specific case, it's giving ammunition to the right wing. Now, of course, we referred last week to a right-wing podcaster, of course, who jumps on stories like this, and you can't blame him, of course. And we have a similar issue here in the UK, for example. It's slightly linked, but it is to do with immigration. And we have an enormous amount of immigrants who end up assaulting our women in British society. And again, this is just feeding easy ammunition to right-wing extremists, which in turn is feeding hate crime. So of course, once again, the indirect victims of all this are just ordinary people living their lives, and particularly in our ethnic communities, whether you're a Muslim or you're a Sikh or whatever, perfectly ordinary, decent people who live and have quietly, happily integrated in our society are finding that they are becoming the butt of these problems. They are becoming the victims, the indirect victims of this huge crime wave. So again, it's not just the initial crime, it's all the indirect impact on the whole of society. And I find that deeply, deeply sad. And of course, another element of that terrible that death of Amandeep Kaur in Stockton, again, it just highlights another issue which we do touch on quite regularly, and this is the general crimes against women. And it's not even necessarily hate crimes, it's just the general crimes against women. There is too much of it. Women are more vulnerable in society, as we often report, and again, this is it's very much reflected in Indian society as well. And again, it's a great tragedy of Indian society, and I always say, we are great fans of India and the Indian people, but one of its endemic issues is its treatment of women, and how women have become such victims, such unfortunately regular victims of sexual assault, whether it's rapes, even gang rapes, or even relatively low-level, simple sexual harassment. It's because they are treated as second-class citizens. Now, here in the West, women are treated, unfortunately, with much better attention, and they are treated as, generally speaking, as equals. But they are still, sadly, disproportionately victims of crime. Now, this particular crime, they say the victims in an overwhelming majority of murder cases, sadly, the victim knows who the perpetrator was. It is usually perpetrated by somebody known to the victim. We don't know about this story. It doesn't appear, at least on the face of it, to be a hate crime. Like, for example, the dreadful rapes we had here in the UK against two women that were clearly hate crimes. This may just be just a sad criminal case of a woman becoming a victim. But it does highlight this overall story of too many women are victims of too many crimes, whether it's low-level sexual harassment or whether it's all the way up to these awful murders, etc. James. So I think that is a very deeply tragic aspect to that one single story.
Absolutely, Angus. And unfortunately, it is another life lost. And that is tragic, whether it's male, female, or such. But it also just shows the bigger problem of violence within the communities in terms of the difficulties to try and solve these when you have, whether it's minority communities, whether it is financially suppressed communities, and so forth, that it is so hard for police to build that trust, to get people to feel safe to speak out. Especially when we look at the same issue that I was talking about here in Canada, is that when there's bail that's easy to get and the criminals are coming out the door as fast as the paperwork can drive from the police officers, they catch them, they bring them in, they do the paperwork, and then the court set them free. And it's almost like a catch and release game. And that, again, instills a bigger fear in the community, because now the victims and witnesses are concerned that if the person is out, then they become targeted because they risk, of course, the conviction down the road for that individual that's been accused.
A good point, very good point. But yeah, sadly, Ed, it's just a huge amount of resources now required to deal with these issues that are coming from India. And that does actually sort of lead me on to my first story. And I want to talk about this poor gentleman. Amarjit Singh, he resides in Canada, and this is this story, and it's very reflective of this transnational repression coming out of India. Of course, out of India, there is just the straightforward, good old-fashioned criminal wave, the crime wave that's coming out of India, whether it's extortion rackets or whatever, that's just driven by a simple greed for money, power, whatever you want to call it. But of course, there is this other element, this sort of more political element, which is the transnational repression. This is by a factor of whatever, much more serious, because again, it is deeply insidious, it's deeply dangerous. It is political war against the whole community, of course, the Sikh community. And Amarjit Singh has found himself, a very ordinary, decent guy, just living in Canada, has found himself really becoming the potential victim of this political war of India against the Sikh community. So you may recall it happened. Well, let me talk you through this article, which will give you sort of a bit of the background. But of course, this is all linked to the story of Hardeep Singh Najjar. Now, Amarjit was living in Montreal at the time. He got a call from a relative in India saying that his name was blasted across the Indian papers, that the India's National Investigation Agency was after him. And this came as a bit of a shock to him. He was actually apparently being branded a terrorist in India across the Gaudiya media. This happened in June 2023. And the Indian government accused him of leading a mob of protesters who allegedly threw 2 grenades into the country's High Commission in Ottawa during a protest that happened only 3 months earlier. Now, this protest was actually one of many that happened at that time. And it was protesting against the Indian government's crackdown on civil liberties in Punjab. Of course, the Sikh community was unsurprisingly motivated to take to the streets to highlight what was going on in the Punjab. But Amarjit said, as the report will unfold to back up what he was claiming, was that it was a peaceful protest. There was no violence. There's nothing wrong. It was just a normal, typical Sikh protest. It was a peaceful protest. He himself, in the story, it gives a bit of his background. He's a truck driver, man of faith. He's a regular attender at his Gurdwara. But this protest happened just a few days before the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar was gunned down just outside his Gurdwara. Now, of course, the parallels to Hardeep Singh Nijjar was that likewise the Indian government had labelled Nijjar a terrorist because of his pro-Khalistan his campaigning. He was, again, one of the many Khalistan campaigners. He was one of the more high profile and had clearly been named by India as a potential target. And Amarjit, sadly, after his protest, was and then with his name being plastered across Indian media, assumed that India had targeted him. Now, the reasons were, well, was it to do with his protest, or was it to do, more sinisterly, that he is actually married to Amritpal's sister, Amritpal Singh's sister. Of course, Amritpal Singh, again, he's now elected to the Lok Sabha. He's now sitting in Dibrugarh jail for his campaigning. He's a pro-Khalistan campaigner, very high-profile activist in the Punjab. He's now sitting in prison. And we do know that India has this cowardly tactic of attacking anybody related to people it classes as political dissenters. So, of course, Amarjit naturally assumed it was because he was married to Amritpal's sister. Now, there's a bit of background again to his story. He lives in he originally came from Butala in Punjab, but he left after, like a lot of the Punjab, started to economically decline. Again, part of these deliberate policies of the Indian government to try and wind down the threat of the Punjab against central control. And so, of course, he fled to Canada because he was feeling increasingly vulnerable, as many Sikhs have done, and the reason why they ended up in the diaspora. And he arrived in Canada in 2018. So, and then just 5 years later, at this protest, this accusation arrived. Now, I talk about this cowardly tactic of India. Well, back in India, after this protest, authorities escalated their pressure campaign, raiding the homes of his mother, his sister and uncle, forcing their way in to seize documents, memorabilia, photos and cell phones. And again, this is a very typical tactic. And so many Sikhs that I've certainly talked to who are Khalistani campaigners have reported the same cowardly tactic. And again, it's a tactic of an authoritarian state running out of control and accountability that targets the families of people who are living overseas. If they can't reach them overseas, they'll then attack, harass, intimidate, imprison members of their family back home. Again, it's such a deeply cowardly tactic. And again, that tactic alone speaks volumes of the so-called democratic credentials of India. Anyway, in Amarjit's view, India's false accusations that he's a terrorist are about power and leverage, part of a strategy to punish political dissent by ensnaring the families of activists. Yeah, basically, it's a well-known tactic. The newspapers back in India portrayed this original demonstration in Ottawa. They claimed that he was the leader of this mob of protesters, they call it. And the NIA, the National Investigation Agency, claimed demonstrators had tied Khalistani separatist flags to the High Commission gate. Yeah, they may well have done. There's nothing wrong with that. Shouted anti-India slogans. Well, welcome to a democracy. We're allowed to do that. But then it claimed that he hurled 2 grenades into the building. Now, this is obviously where it gets a little bit serious. Now, Ottawa police themselves have said, no, this is not true. The event went off without incident. There are no reported crimes, certainly no reports of grenades being thrown. They said there is a possibility, they don't know, they couldn't confirm it, but there was a possibility of a smoke canister may have been thrown. That is not a grenade. But of course, you can see how the story develops. You can see how the Indian Godi media had thought, oh, I know, if that was a smoke grenade, let's just spin it a little, just say it was a grenade that was thrown. Again, a very different story that comes out of India to back their potential attempts to assassinate the guy as a so-called terrorist. Don't forget, put this in the context that Narendra Modi, the leader of India, the leader of a democratic nation, actually said publicly, up to the last election last year, we will come into your homes and kill you. Those are the actual words of the Prime Minister of India. Again, it's horrific. Anyway, so the claims against him have similarities to those, of course, against Avtar Singh Kandar. Avtar Singh Kandar here in the UK, likewise, was part of a protest in London against the Indian High Commission for, again, very much the similar reasons. He was falsely accused of tearing down the Indian tricolour flag from the Indian High Commission in London. His name, likewise, was blasted across Indian media, and a few days later, he was dead under very, very suspicious circumstances. So it is believed that Avtar Singh Kandar was murdered by the Indian state, as the Indian state or the Indian media claimed he was a terrorist for tearing down this flag, which in fact he didn't. Right. So again, likewise, Amarjit is unsurprisingly a little bit scared for his own life because the parallels are very obvious there. Now, Amarjit actually wrote to the Foreign Interference Commission in Canada, beg your pardon, and said, look, I implore the Canadian government to take stronger action to protect Sikhs in Canada from such foreign interference. Now, unfortunately, with Trudeau, he probably would have been taken seriously. Carney clearly won't take him as seriously. I think he may be wasting his time, as we often talk about. There has been a visible increase in online hate speech against South Asians in Canada, especially Sikh men. Again, transnational oppression is rising, as indeed hate crimes from the far-right extremists, as we talk about regularly. And for 40 years, we're telling our stories, but no one was listening. Now the RCMP and the Prime Minister have spoken openly. It's not conspiracy theories anymore. It's actually the truth. As we often report, James, as you often report, CSIS and the RCMP know this is going on. They are fully aware of India's transnational oppression. The problem is that the buck is stopping with the Canadian politicians who are clearly not doing enough about it in terms of policy and public statements about it. As I keep saying, there's this disjoint between law enforcement and intelligence and the actual politicians who are writing policy. And again, the article compares and contrasts Trudeau and Carney, how they've dealt with things. And finally, the World Sikh Organisation, the WSO, are calling for a formal inquiry into Indian interference in Canada and for a suspension of intelligence sharing with India until human rights safeguards are in place. So again, James, it's back to, well, from the high level story of this, is the Canadian government going to do anything about it? Well, we talk about that regularly. But the real crux of this story is this is an innocent guy who just happened to join a democratic protest, a peaceful democratic protest, and suddenly finds his life is in danger from the very nation that he was protesting against. This isn't the actions of a democratic nation. India. Now, if India was a democratic, fully accountable nation that ran its society and its politicians under the normal democratic rule of law, it wouldn't be targeting international dissenters with the threat against their lives. This guy's living under the threat of his life. People like Amarjit are being served these threat to life warnings from CSIS, from the RCMP. Likewise here in the UK, many in our own Sikh community are being served these threats to life warnings that your life is in danger, is under threat from Indian government hit squads. Again, these are not the actions of a so-called democratic nation, James. And sadly, this is just one of many innocent guys who is living in a democratic nation, exercising his democratic rights, and as a result is now under threat of his life from this nation that is running out of control or accountability, James.
Absolutely. And I recall reporting on this back in 2023 and looking at the evidence or the claims that were there. There was no evidence of any grenades being thrown. The RCMP, in addition to the Ottawa Police Service, now the RCMP, they would have been involved because this involves a consulate or the High Commission of India. This involves foreign dignitaries and diplomats. This involves international concern. So therefore, the RCMP would have known if there was any grenades or such launch. And of course, the Ottawa Police Service was there as crowd control to make sure that the peace was kept and that it was a peaceful protest, which they confirmed it was. And going back to that time, the RCMP said, no, there are no credible bits of information whatsoever that there was any grenades thrown at the High Commission. And this is not the first time, and it won't be the last, that India has made these false accusations against people protesting near the High Commission and their consulates. So again, it just shows the depths of ridiculousness that the India government is going to in order to not only target people on Canadian soil, but as you pointed out, Angus, they are targeting the families of these individuals in India and using this as an excuse, which is completely false.
And this is where India are really struggling with the narrative, because, of course, there is always these accusations of hypocrisy against the West. Well, the United States goes out and extrajudicially murders terrorists overseas in the Middle East or whatever. And so India says, well, you're doing it, so we're going to do it. Now, the problem there, of course, is that the terrorists that are being extrajudicially killed, murdered, let's call it what it is, by the United States, I certainly don't endorse it, but ultimately there is evidence clearly out there that these people that are being killed are genuine terrorists. They are running around but making bombs, they're carrying weapons. Usually when they're killed, they're usually carrying weapons, so that at least there is an element of defence to say they are genuine terrorists, these guys. But people like Amajit are not terrorists, and this is where India is struggling, because they're desperately trying to, again, keep the narrative saying, well, these guys are terrorists, so we can kill them too, like you're killing your terrorists. Well, these guys aren't terrorists. The point is, this guy didn't throw grenades. All these people that you are murdering, like Hardeep Singh Nijjar, are not terrorists, and they're having to fabricate the evidence. And this is where their moral standpoint falls apart, is that they have to fabricate the evidence to try and justify that these guys are, that they're claiming them to be terrorists, when clearly they are not. They're just democratic protesters. They are political dissenters. There's a huge gulf of difference between a political dissenter and an actual terrorist, and that's really where the Indian argument falls apart. So, but of course, this does lead on to, as I say, and I often report, that the only solution to this is only ever going to end either when Western politicians actually ostracise India, which clearly they're not going to do, because India just has too much commercial temptation to do so. So our politicians are not going to do this, which leaves that there can only be one other solution. That, of course, is an independent sovereign Sikh state, that of Khalistan. So I'm delighted to report that yet again, another legal stepping stone is being put in place to march us towards this sovereign Sikh state of Khalistan. And the United Nations, of course, are going to play a huge part in this. Now, the UN is often, it holds all sorts of different commissions into human rights and all sorts of things relevant to global society and the well-being and good running of global society. And of course, many of the commissions then invite people from all these communities who have something to say, to highlight issues that need to be arbitrated upon, or at least brought to the attention of the global community. Now, I'm always criticising on a regular basis the UN, actually how effective it is, but ultimately it will form a really significant part of that legal process to endorse and stamp in position the existence of Khalistan. So every time that the Sikh community gets an opportunity to present to the United Nations, to present the truth, to basically obviously counteract the narrative coming out of India, the fake narrative coming out of India, every time this happens, it is just yet another nail in the coffin of united India, let's call it, and actually it is just another supporting foundation stone being put into place for the establishment of Khalistan. So anyway, in recent days, just a few days ago, I'm going to play a video. This is, it was the 18th United Nations Forum on Peace Building, Accountability and Transitional Justice. It's a bit of a mouthful. Ultimately, it's just yet another commission convened by the United Nations to hear from different communities about basically what's going on in the world. We need to know about it. And of course, the Sikh community, as it always is, was very active in terms of campaigning to highlight their issues in the community. And it was a gentleman called Seema Singh of Sikh Assembly of America, another organisation that's advocating for Khalistan, advocating for Sikh issues and Sikh rights. Now, Seema addressed the UN officials, diplomats and international human rights bodies who were in attendance in that convention. And he publicly detailed India's state-sponsored assassination operations. Let me play you this video. It's a couple of minutes. You'll hear again a lot of it. We've heard a lot of this before, but again, it's worth hearing. Here you go.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Sikh Assembly of America.
Madam Chair, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Rogan te, Arsogan te, Jal Jogan te, Bahupant Bachava, Satra ne ek Chalavat Kav, Tautan ek Nalagan Pava. I thank you for the opportunity to speak at the 18th United Nations Forum. The Sikh Assembly submits this statement and would like to raise three concerns that are affecting the Sikh community in the struggle for peace building in Punjab, as well as the struggle for transitional justice and representation. The US, UK, and Canadian authorities have exposed an international nexus of organized criminals working in coordination with Indian intelligence agencies to carry out murders of Sikh representatives working under the United Nations Charter of Self-Determination, including the successful assassinations of Khalistan leaders Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Avtar Singh Khanda, and an attempt on Khalistan referendum leader Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. The Khalistan referendum is the only solution to freeing Punjab from Indian occupation, and its leaders are being killed without accountability. We request the UN Special Rapporteur to conduct an independent investigation and truth commission to hold the responsible members of the Indian government accountable for killing Sikh representatives. The Sikh Assembly worked to introduce the Transnational Repression Reporting Act in the United States to enhance intelligence sharing between security agencies and improve federal monitoring of threats to all diaspora communities facing repression. We request the United Nations Human Rights Council to issue a similar resolution of interdepartment cooperation to protect all minority representatives being targeted transnationally by violent regimes. The second concern relates to the halting of transitional justice with unresolved human rights violations from Punjab's past in the 1980s and 1990s at the height of the Sikh genocide. Human rights leader Jaswant Singh Khalda exposed more than 25,000 cases of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, and falsified encounter reports. For documenting these abuses, he himself was abducted, tortured, and later murdered in police custody. The struggle for transitional justice continues to be restricted today as the film Punjab 95, documenting Jaswant Singh Khalda's investigations, has been banned by the Indian Board of Film Certification, requiring over 125 cuts in an attempt to hide historical facts and further delay transitional justice of the Sikh genocide. Thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
There he
Now
goes.
I give the
It's,
floor.
500 words a minute, because he is obviously only allocated 2 minutes to get his point across.
That's right.
But very, very important ultimately, because again, what's so important about this is that it is very important for the Khalistan movement to prove legally that India is treating its community, particularly the Sikh community in Punjab, as second-class citizens. It is not respecting their human rights. And again, this is a very important legal point to get across to the international community, because when it gets legal, when the whole thing comes to some form of international court to arbitrate and to decide on the establishment of Khalistan, they need to prove under international law that India, because India's defence about this is the establishment of Khalistan is a threat to the integrity of India's borders, to India's geographical existence. Well, the only reason that legal argument does not work, is if it can be proved that the people within that region are treated lesser than the rest of the country, that their human rights are not respected, or they are not treated as equals. And again, this is all part of that legal process to prove once again, yet again, and yet again, and yet again, it's being repeated and repeated and repeated on the international stage, so that people then, when it comes to be arbitrated, people then take for granted, well, clearly India is treating the people in the Punjab, particularly the Sikh community, as second-class citizens. So that's the importance of this. Again, it's same old. We've heard all these arguments before, but it's the truth. It's just regurgitating the truth over and over again, because the more often that it's heard in the international community, the more likely it is going to sink in and become set as international fact. The truth comes out, as always, and the truth becomes well and truly established, and that is the legal platform upon which Khalistan will happen, James.
Absolutely. And it's a good thing, people accuse me of talking fast, but that was speed talking, and he got some very good points across in that 2 minutes. So for what he had in terms of the timeline, the way that he enunciated everything and pronounced it, but again, made sure it was clearly understood, the facts, and of course the points and the statistics, very well done, and especially given the limited amount of time that was allotted. With that said, of course, we also look at this as an important reason why India wants a seat at the United Nations Security Council and other permanent roles within the UN, because they want to be able to get a veto in order to prevent this from happening. Now, when Khalistan happens, which I have no doubt that it will at some point in the future, for the UN to recognize it, and for the UN Security Council to also recognize it and endorse it, again, that is why India wants that seat at the table, so that they can veto it. And that's why the India government also plays themselves and basically is in bed with Putin, with Xi of China and everybody else, because any of the countries that have that veto power and has that permanent seat at the table at the UN of course, Modi wants to suck up to, because he wants to have that Trump card, so to speak. No link to Trump, but that Trump card in his pocket for the day that Khalistan is formed, that he can just try to find another mechanism in which he thinks that he will be able to circumvent the legal process. And I think that this movement for Khalistan is much bigger than Modi has in the past or in the future is given the Punjab community credit for. And I don't think that's going to work for him, although I'm thinking that's what his goal is.
His big obstacle,
among others, of course.
Of course, yeah. And his big obstacle apparently is there is a belief that China will also veto the entry of India into the top table, because China wants to be the only power in Southeast Asia with the power of veto. So
that's right.
It's India certainly got their work cut out if they want to do that. Right, James. Clock's counting down. Let's rush into our comments column. Thank you to our wonderful audience. Loads of comments still came in after this video we did last week. I just want to cover hopefully maybe the final set on this one. Preetam Corman kicks us off with again a lot of comments like this. His followers are probably Hindutva, as he's paid to babble. This guy should be prosecuted for defamation. I don't think. No, actually, I think you're wrong here. I don't think his followers are Hindutva. I think he's preaching to the right wing, the right wing racists or the right wing white people of Canada. I think that's probably his audience rather than Hindutva. The big question really is he being paid to do it? I don't know. I suspect probably not. And should he be prosecuted for defamation? Well, I'll leave that up to the owners of Satellite TV. That's ultimately why give him the fuel of publicity. I think we'll just agree to disagree on this one and just hopefully call him out and hopefully try and educate the guy, because again I think it's more born out of ignorance. I think if he actually understood what the Khalistan cause was about, ironically he might actually, and his followers might actually align with it, because they might understand actually it's a good thing. It's a good thing for Canada. It's a good thing for the world. It's a good thing for all of us.
And I think that there's also the other side of it, Angus, is that a lot of people in Canada right now, we have been watching what's going on in the US. We've been watching what's going on here in Canada with trucker convoys and ostrich farms and all of this crap. And I think that a lot of these people that are spewing this kind of garbage online are starting to get exposed for what they are. And they're just opportunists trying to find an audience, trying to get the clicks, trying to get the subscribers, and ultimately build their channel. And I don't even think this guy knew for sure what he was talking about. I think he just put together a bunch of talking points when he didn't do any actual background or research. And that's the difference between just a general podcaster and a true journalist. A journalist would have done their research. They would have known what they were talking about, and they would have had the ethical responsibility to bring truth into the report. And this was everything except for truthful. So again, I think a lot of people are seeing it for what it really is. And, as they say, opinions are like assholes, Angus. Everybody's got one.
Exactly, indeed. And I think you are right. I think I think it's more born out of ignorance and trying to get he's preaching to his audience. Basically, he's talking to an audience that he knows how his audience aligns. And again, as my Google, right, it says a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Of course, he's picked up a little knowledge and he's spun his own story around it. And unfortunately, he's actually managed to offend a whole community. As it says, Sikhs wants to kill everybody. Well, clearly they don't. Obviously they don't. It's a really silly thing to say. But it feeds into that sort of narrative that's talking to his audience and building his YouTube channel. And G Hungru says, report this YouTuber to the RCMP. He needs to be behind bars. Well, actually, I disagree with this. I think your reaction is completely understandable. I was equally angry about the stuff that he was saying, but take a step back. We know why he said it. This is a classic case of this guy needs educating rather than being punished. And he's no. What you're saying, mate, is completely wrong. And if actually you knew the truth, you actually probably might align with the whole Khalistan cause because of what it actually stands for and who, ironically, it is standing against. Because maybe I think we are aligned in who it's against. So that's more the case. And let's not also forget that same protection on the freedom of speech allows us to have our show. And
people argue with us. People don't like our show. People don't like what we stand for. And although we are bringing truth and we do our research and our background on the stories that we report on, again, it's all about that freedom of speech. Whether or not there's defamation, that would be up to Sikhs for Justice or others to take them into a civil court if they chose to do so. But in terms of a criminal, I just don't know that it hits the threshold of, criminality when it comes to the hate speech crimes or such in Canada.
Yeah.
So again, we got to be careful about that balance of freedom of speech for ourselves as well as others. So.
Yeah, that was the other point obviously I wanted to bring out is likewise, it's freedom of speech. He has the absolute right to say these things. As long as it doesn't, it's unlikely it's criminal. If he's inciting violence, that is a criminal offence, and he's not inciting violence. He's just, as you said, it's actually more about defamation, which is a civil crime. And for that, he would not go behind bars. He would have to compensate the victim. So it's a very different thing. So again, this is freedom of speech. He has every right to say these sorts of things, however wrong and ill-informed they may be. He has absolutely every right to say these things. And as we often say, we will defend his right to say these things. Unfortunately, we will try our best to try and educate him about the truth of the matter. Anyway, BNG and lots of other BNG letters in his name says, this is a good comment. Pakistan loves Khalistan. We support our Sikh brothers. And this actually evokes quite a long thread, a long discussion. But another element of that discussion was Rupa Sandhu, who says, give Sikhs back to Lahore then. Well, again, so first of all, lots of issues here. But firstly, a lot of Pakistan does support the whole concept of Khalistan. We've talked a lot about this amicable feeling between the Pakistan side of the border and the Sikh community who reside in India, in the Punjab. Again, likewise, the Kartarpur corridor was negotiated with Pakistan to allow Punjabi Sikhs to cross the border to visit that place of pilgrimage. So again, there is this great, strong feeling, and it's nothing to do with the ISI or whatever, as all the critics like to claim. It's just a simple fact that those on the Pakistan side of the border recognise the decency of the Sikh people. They recognise the whole concept of Khalistan actually does the whole region a massive favour. But of course, Rupa Sandhu comes back with this point: give Sikhs back to Lahore then. Well, because of course Lahore originally was within the original Sikh Empire. It was originally within Punjab before partition, and likewise, post partition, of course, Khalistanis will say, well, we want Lahore back. Well, again, that's always back down to the negotiations, the discussions about what will form the borders of Khalistan. It's possible. I've been to Lahore. It's a beautiful city, actually. And who knows? It's not for us to decide. It's not worth an argument, certainly at this stage. It will come down into the fine details of the negotiations, James.
Absolutely, and that's what it's going to come down to, is what concessions are going to be given by each side in order to advance other areas of the negotiated, hopefully negotiated separation, we'll say.
Indeed. And Saftu Muffins makes this comment. Indian government stopped live streaming from Hamdir Sahib Ji. Please mention it. We did. Saftu Muffins, if you watched our show, was it 2 or 3 days ago? We mentioned it. SGPC, their YouTube channel had actually been taken off air. It was suspended. I think it is now back on air. But certainly, Saftu Muffins, we definitely did mention it because it was a massive story. Go back a few days, unless there's something else we don't know about. If there is, please let us know. But certainly, the SGPC's YouTube channel was taken down, and we certainly highlighted that outrageous fact. Okay, here we go. Critics Corner. Again, this is 4 days in a row. Hooray! Great. Welcome back, Critics Corner.
4 or 5. We're on a roll.
This is great. So keep these critical comments coming. We do love Critics Corner. This one's a belter. Jack9 something or other says, this pig, and this is referring to me, bless you, this pig is keeping terrorist photo in his back, who used the Gurdwaras as military marches against the Indian army. Basically is claiming that Bhindranwale used the Hamdir Sahib as a military base to launch operations against the Indian army. And likewise, you're saying that the same thing's happening in the USA and Canada, that the Gurdwaras are being used against whoever. Again, the point is not very clear. Again, firstly, I think our audience know the answer to this one already without me having to sort of say it. If you want to call me a pig, by all means, I'm being called worse, don't worry. I'm quite happy to be called rude names for standing up for something I strongly believe in. It's, to use an English phrase, it's water off a duck's back. The photo behind me, as we all know, it hangs in every single Gurdwara around the world. He's not a terrorist. He's actually, he was a freedom fighter. He was a guy who basically stood up for his basic human rights, the human rights of the Sikh people in the Punjab. I would suggest you stop reading Indian propaganda and actually do a little bit of research into the truth of the matter of who Bhindranwale Ji was, what he actually represented. He was attacked by a line of tanks in the most holy, sacred site of the Sikh religion. And again, the events speak for themselves, which over 10,000 innocent men, women and children were murdered by the Indian military, whereas you're turning it around saying, oh no, he was actually attacking the Indian military. Sorry, mate, I think you're deeply wrong there. Anyway, so the conversation sort of ran on. There's a long thread on this. And Gurpreet, bless you, Gurpreet, you waded in on several occasions on this one, standing it quite robustly, as you rightly say. Look, this person's picture, Bhindranwale Ji's picture, is all over the place. It's not just in Gurdwaras, it's actually publicly displayed at the referenda, etc. There isn't even an FIR on him. So what makes him actually a terrorist? Explain to him. If this guy was a terrorist, there'd be all sorts of problems here in the West. Certainly, I wouldn't certainly would be allowed to display this without having a few knocks on the door, etc., etc. And then TC, the grown-up in the room, wades in. Thank you, TC. Please refrain from using derogatory language. The language that you use sadly reflects more about you. Hatred is an unhealthy pursuit. It can lead to serious psychological damage. So just chill, man. It's basically saying, may God bless you and put you on the path of truth. Well said, TC. I couldn't put it better myself.
Absolutely, Angus. And I will agree with one thing. I think that the Sikhs are using the Gurdwaras in Canada, in the US, and other parts of the world to wage battles. They are battling hunger. They are battling inequality. They are battling racism. They're battling all of these horrific things and making life better for everybody in the community. So yeah, they are using it to launch battles. And again, for the positive change in communities and to make all of our lives better. So not just their own, but the entire city, the entire country, the entire world. Those are the battles that they're waging in the Gurdwaras. They have the doors open. If you're hungry, come in and get something to eat. I mean, come on now, really?
Exactly. And contrast, of course, those peaceful, democratic and philanthropic battles that the Sikh community are battling from the Gurdwaras with what's being battled and fought from the Mandirs and indeed from the consulates of India, who actually genuinely are fighting a violent battle. They are launching their violence, their transnational oppression against the Sikh community from their Mandirs, from their consulates, etc. So in fact, you can turn this completely around and say, actually, no, the ones who actually are the terrorists in this is a completely different story. But anyway, Jack 9, whatever, thank you so much for your comment and bless you. And as TC says, may God bless you and put you on the path of truth. Pam Singh says, hey, Angus and James, you guys make all the difference in educating listeners from all backgrounds, and certainly those of us with English as a first language. Our research is exceptional. Well, thank you, Pam, for your lovely comment. And Stay Safe says, look, it's not just Punjabi Sikhs just doing all the work single-handedly. We need a coalition of the willing. In other words, it's all about a wider community. And likewise, Atinda G. Human says, thank you for protecting us, people. Thank you for protecting us. People are so evil. And Stay Safe again comes back in, and my reaction, in fact, Stay Safe beat me to this because my reaction was the same. Look, we're not protecting you guys. The Sikh community is doing a very, very good job by itself. We are but a small voice who are trying to highlight the truth to help enable and facilitate the community to protect itself, as indeed it is doing very effectively. As Stay Safe says, look, we're protecting our own community. They are supporting us. Exactly, that's what we're doing. We're here to support you in every way that we can, but we have to protect ourselves. In other words, it all comes down to protecting ourselves, James.
Absolutely, but hey, we live dangerously. It's just the way of life. Because when you speak for truth, when you speak for honesty, and you speak for human rights, there's always going to be a moving target. And, we could be that moving target this week. Somebody else with a bigger story against China's human rights could be the target next week. So again, if you are speaking the truth and you have conviction about what you are talking about with the truth, then that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Indeed, and the final set starts off with, I do like to pick out names that we don't see very often in the comments column, just to say hi and welcome to the channel, welcome to the family. Even Jasper Core, thank you for your comment. Good information. Well, thank you, bless you for your comment. And Sufted Bumpins comes back and says, look, at least 1 million subscribers are needed. Come on, everybody, get out there. Please stand with Angus and James. We couldn't put that better, James. We do need to get our subscriber numbers out, and we can only do that. We certainly can't do it through YouTube's organic growth because they are throttling us at every opportunity. It's up to our wonderful audience to spread the word, James.
Absolutely, and spread it all over other social media platforms as well. You can just copy the web address on this video, post it or paste it to your page on Facebook and elsewhere. So again, if you can help us to grow our audience, we are gratefully appreciative of that.
Indeed. So if any of our stories or anything that we say strikes a chord with you, do spread us, share us on social media, just share a video, whatever it is. It does help get the word out there, and of course get the truth out there. And next stop, Punjab. I love this one. He says, "Love you guys." According to Google Translate, I had to look at this one. It's "love you guys." Well, we love you, so thank you for spreading the love. And the final set, of course, goes to Manjit Kaur, who says, "Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ka Fateh." Lots of spreading the love from JJS, Gurmo Hang Greywell, Satsri Akal to you, and the final sign off again to our regular Sufti Muffins. Thank you for your Khalistan Zindabad. Lots of love in the comments columns. Of course, we always send back to our wonderful audience. Thank you so much for all your support, all your comments. Do keep them coming though. We do appreciate them. We do read, of course, every comment that comes in, and especially if you send us links or whatever via our message at sutlejtv.com email, where you can, of course, talk to James and I directly. Let us know stories that you think we should be talking about, if you think we've missed something important, or there's something that you'd like us to research to check out the veracity, the truth of. Let us know. But that's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.